Welcome to Trulyfit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Hannah, thanks so much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast. Why don't you give the listeners and audience a background, a bio of what you do in the health and fitness industry?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Hannah Thompson. I am a registered dietitian and a certified personal trainer. I am a kind of newbie dietitian. So I just actually graduated back in, May 2020 from Purdue University. I've been a personal trainer for a little bit longer, but I am a little baby dietitian. And so I just started my first full-time career working mainly in weight management, but I do also have my own private practice called Help with Hannah, which we can always link to that later, I suppose. But I mainly do, I have a YouTube channel, I have a blog, and I also have a podcast that I co-host as well. So those are kind of my main things that I work on. So yeah.
Cool. I first want to ask you, being that you're both a personal trainer, you have experience there, and you're a registered dietitian, about scope of practice. We talk about this a lot, and it's something that always comes up if you go to, let's say, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, like Facebook boards. It's a question that's always asked is, what should I be saying? What should I not be saying? What's the extent of the information I should be giving? And although people sort of, I'll say, talk the talk, nobody walks the walk. So people will say, oh, you should only really give general information, yet I can go on all of their Facebook and Instagrams and find out that they're giving very specific information. So what are your thoughts on this? Where does your scope of practice lie, and what do you think it should be?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm pretty passionate about this, actually. It is wonderful being able to be both a trainer and a dietitian, because I feel like that's the best case scenario, because there is that very fine line that people sometimes cross. I don't want to, make anyone feel bad for doing what they're trying to be passionate about and do, but it is a very fine line that is often crossed, whether it's intentional or not. But I think the key word you already said is specifics. As a trainer who's not a dietitian, the biggest thing is you can absolutely say things like, make sure you have plenty of protein after your workout, perhaps get in some carbs too. That kind of thing is absolutely encouraged, because it's just normal for your clients to ask you those questions, while you're training them. But a trainer who is not a dietitian should likely not be giving out specific calorie goals or macros, or maybe give it certain vitamin recommendations. That is where it kind of gets a little bit wishy-washy, and trainers should probably steer clear of any specific advice like that.
Yeah. And I think that's what most people are told as personal trainers through, again, whether it's National Academy of Sports Medicine or ACE or any of these other certifications, because medically speaking, we don't want to upset the apple cart with someone who might potentially have another doctor or another dietitian or somebody else giving them advice concerning that, and then we're telling them other advice. So it's best to just sort of stay in our lanes. And that's why, again, I don't want to go on a tirade here because I talk about this a lot, but that's why it's best to just network in the industry, right? If you network in the industry and you have one person who does your physical therapy, I'm speaking from a personal trainer standpoint, one person who you ship out for nutrition advice, and someone else for sports medicine, whatever it is, then you'll never have to worry about stepping on people's toes, and you'll get referrals back your way as well.
Exactly. I think that's the really important thing, is to have lots of different people in your circle with all different kinds of expertise that you can always refer to, instead of just trying to do it all yourself, because then you cannot give your client the best care they need.
So I'm sure we can talk about a lot of different things, being that we do one of the same two jobs, and there's a million nutrition related questions I could ask you. But today specifically, we're going to be talking a little bit about post-workout and pre-workout meals, and what exactly your body needs. What are maybe the misconceptions about these things? Are supplements okay to take pre-workout, things of this nature? And I want to just start off, for any of the listeners who maybe aren't in our field, who don't know exactly what we're talking about, could we just give a vague description of what we mean by pre and post workout meals?
Yes, I think it's a great question. I think people have often heard the analogy that like our body is a car, it needs gas to run. And I really think that's a great basic analogy to use. And food truly is fuel in that way. And if we don't eat the right foods before a workout, we're not going to perform optimally. And if we don't eat the right foods after our workouts, we're not going to recover, the best that we can. So we really need to rely on food. And I'll go over in this episode today what exactly those foods look like that would be good for pre and post workout. But we really need to use food as our tool to make sure that we are performing the best and then also recovering the best that we can so we can continue to perform, time and time again.
Okay, so that's perfect. That's a great lead in here. So we'll start with the pre-workout and then we'll get to the post-workout just to sort of keep this itemized. Simple carbohydrates, I guess, for glycemic index or fast acting access to energy is what we're told as trainers. That's again, a limited parlance we have in the nutrition world, but that's what we're told. Do you recommend that specifically? Is it better to have a mixture of carbohydrates? And I'm sure that it matters based on your training, right? If I'm running long distances as opposed to maybe doing a short HIIT workout.
Exactly. Yeah. So it depends on the type of training. And I think maybe more importantly, it really matters on the timing. So we definitely want those like simple, really quick, fast acting carbs. And I can give examples of that in one of the, I think, future questions here actually. But we really want those simple, fast acting carbs, say like perhaps the workout's in like less than an hour. That is when our body would be able to best utilize that very quick source of glucose to perform the best. If you have say an hour or two before your workout, you could absolutely incorporate more of like a complex carb and even some protein. And I think that would probably be the best case actually, because that would help you to stay full a little bit longer. If you had just that fast acting carb, that simple carb, but you still had 2 hours before your training, it would probably go right through you. You probably feel pretty hungry or even fatigued during the workout at that time point. So I would say, again, if it's less than an hour, simple carb is great. If it's 1 or 2 hours, you could absolutely include that protein, even have more of a complex carb. And if you have even more than 2 hours, say, I don't know, it's like lunchtime at work, you don't train till the evening, you could absolutely just consider, have a well-balanced normal meal with carb, protein, and perhaps some kind of color or fiber as well, like your veggies. I think that would be best case scenario there. So I think the timing really is the biggest deciding factor on what type of carb to choose specifically.
Okay, so timing is the biggest factor. And then down that next two items would be the type of training you may be doing, right? As light cardio as compared to like maybe an ultra marathon training. And then also food type would be very important.
Exactly.
All right, so let's just talk general population here. Somebody who is just working out 3 to 4 times a week in a gym, and they do a mixture of cardio machines and weights for just general overall health and wellness. Could you prescribe a good workout meal for them? What would be a description of some examples that they would eat?
Yeah. So let's kind of break it down based on those little time stamps I just gave. So in terms of the less than 1 hour situation where you want those simple carbs, that could either be some kind of juice where it's, pretty much just straight up glucose going into your body. I guess it's fructose, but anyway, you could do it like a juice or like a Gatorade or another kind of sports drink, fruit snacks or sports chews. If you want something more starchy, you could do a pretzel. I know this is very not dietitian-esque, but Pop-Tarts could be a great choice. If you do want to do any kind of fruit, I would shoot for a low fiber fruit at this point. So I wouldn't do maybe I don't know, an apple or a pear with the skin on it. Maybe shoot for more some dried fruit, some applesauce, maybe some canned fruit. Those types of things will have less fiber and they'll just give you that fast energy a lot more than a fibrous fruit would. So that would be maybe some ideas to shoot for if you have less than an hour. Say maybe you wake up in the morning and you work out really shortly after that. That's the kind of thing I would shoot for. We really want to limit our fiber, our fat, and our proteins at this time because those things are great. We want to have those normally, but before a workout, they can really slow down digestion and we just can't get those carbs as accessibly or as accessible to our muscles and for energy. So biggest thing is those simple carbs. And then if we have that 1 or 2 times time span before our workout where we want to shoot for carbs and protein, this might look like string cheese and a rice cake, perhaps like a yogurt parfait. If you want to do that sports drink, I would pair it with like a granola bar. Maybe a smoothie would be good, getting some kind of carbs from the fruit, and then maybe some protein powder, something like that to kind of beef it up a little bit. Again, high fat may not be tolerated super well this close to the workout either, just because fat is very slowly digested, which is normally a great thing to keep us full, but that's not the goal before a workout. And then lastly, if we had that 2 or more hours where we're just trying to eat a well-balanced meal, we're not so much trying to get that very fast acting simple carb in there. That would just be more of like your well-balanced plate. So carbs, protein, some kind of fiber or color from a vegetable, perhaps. So that could be like your basic old chicken, veggie, and rice situation, or potato, perhaps. Maybe like some oatmeal with milk and fruit, maybe like a deli meat sandwich, maybe add some fruit to that. Again, this one is a little bit less strategic about like getting those fast acting carbs and more so just about eating a nice, well-balanced meal. If you do that 2-hour meal and then you still feel like you might want something else before your workout, you could always have that meal and then say right before your workout, add that simple carb just for that quick burst of energy. If you do feel that 2, 3, 4 hours is far too long after your last meal to then try to exercise on. A lot of us need more energy, more consistently than like every 2, 3 hours or so.
Now, in your field, in the field of nutrition, energy and calories are synonymous, right? So they mean the same thing. Like calories give you energy, but to the layman, they just assume energy is sort of, for lack of a better term, like their vitality, like their clear head, their ability to push through, those sorts of things. That's how they use energy. So that leads to my next question is that, pre-workout drinks, a lot of them don't necessarily have calories in them, right? But they give us quote unquote energy. Do you have an issue with pre-workout drinks, whether it's the amount of caffeine they have in them or certain types? Do you anecdotally use them themselves? Just any information you have about pre-workout drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of the infamous words of every dietitian, but it depends on a lot of different things. In terms of like the energy, I would absolutely encourage you, to get your energy from food first. Follow that advice I kind of just gave of getting in plenty of carbs, plenty of protein. That is what's really going to give you the fuel that you actually need. Now, I think caffeine's great. I think caffeine can be a really good thing to add in. The tricky part with supplements is they are not always well regulated. That's kind of my biggest struggle with supplements in general, including pre-workouts. The FDA has much more of a reactive approach rather than a proactive with supplements. And so we cannot always be 100% sure what's in those. Whereas with food, we kind of know what's going to be in that, and we feel a lot safer oftentimes. So if you do take a pre-workout, again, I highly encourage you to get your energy from food first. And if you do want a little pick-me-up before your workout, it just, kind of gets you excited to take that or whatever it might be, by all means, go for it. I do recommend, though, looking for third-party testing through like NSF, Consumer Lab. Those are some really great third-party evaluators. The reason that I recommend that is those third parties are able to, assess the quality of the supplement. They can make sure the label is accurate. So they're not just like saying that it's okay, but it actually has these weird things in them. And it's also important that it's a third party. It's not just the supplement company itself saying that their product is A-okay, even though, they could definitely just be saying that. And in terms of the caffeine, I guess I didn't really touch on that too much. I would say, the general recommendations, like about 400 milligrams per day is generally safe for most people. If you find that you are super sensitive, you take a pre-workout and you just find that you're super jittery, you just don't feel quite right, it may not be a good fit for you, and that's okay. The average person really doesn't need a pre-workout because, again, the food is going to be the biggest thing we want to get our energy from. But I have no problem with people who take them as long as they do their research, find one that fits their needs, and maybe do their best to make sure it's one that is third-party tested. That's probably the best fit.
Yeah, I'll add just one thing to that I think people are becoming addicted to these pre-workouts to the extent that if they don't have them, they feel like they can't go work out. And that's an issue, right? So I think understanding that if you're relying upon something every day, it's different if it's 1 or 2 cups of coffee in the morning, right? That's half of America. But if you can't have your 2 or 3 scoops of No Explode before you go work out, then that could be a problem. Because now you're going to be taking this for the rest of your life, essentially, and that's not what you want to be doing. It's not like you're taking it out of your cabinet maybe once every 30 or 40 days when you didn't get a lot of sleep and something bad's happening, and you're relying on it from like a secondary perspective, like you just talked about, using food as the primary and using that as the secondary. And I think that's how the pre-workout has to be looked at.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about sleep either. Definitely prioritize sleep as well, instead of, like you just said, relying on that pre-workout caffeine fix.
So post-workout wise, the sort of old school bodybuilder thought process was very similar to what you just talked about for the pre-workout, where they don't want a lot of fats because they believe it slowed digestion down. They did more lean meats and a combination of complex and simple carbs, something like maybe a protein shake and, a half a turkey sandwich on wheat bread or something. Is this still the thought for post-workout? If not, what does the science say now?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty great. I mean, I think that's an absolutely fine way to think of it. I think the most controversial part is those fats. That's kind of what has been sort of back and forth about, should we have that post-workout or not? And it truly comes down to that, yes, fats do slow down gastric emptying. And so, the carbs we eat can't get shuttled to our muscles as quickly to replenish the glycogen we use during the workout. But what truly matters the most, more so than micromanaging all these little tiny things before and after workout, it's going to be like what your total daily intake looks like. So even if you do eat fat, say like right after your workout, as long as you are eating plenty of carbs and protein in general throughout the day, you're probably still going to be, getting adequate protein synthesis and all of that. For our average lifter or runner or whoever is, looking for this advice, I would not stress too much about, limiting those fats unless you find that they make you feel uncomfortable, you have any kind of like GI upset, then by all means kind of wait to have those until it's not like around your workout time. But I would say bottom line, the total daily intake of all these different nutrients matters a lot more than trying to, I guess I keep saying micromanage that post-workout, if that kind of makes sense.
Sure. And just to plug some of my own stuff here to help out the audience, before this podcast will be released, the week before, Wendy Hill is on, and the whole podcast is about lipids and fats, the entire podcast. She's also, she's a nutritionist too. So this leads or follows greatly after that podcast. So people who are listening back to back will already have an understanding of what the fats are, right? That because some people, right, well, we talk about fats, but they don't exactly know what sort of foods the fats are in necessarily, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have an idea of the omega-3s and the omega-6s and unsaturated versus saturated and poly and mono and that sort of thing. So if they listen to the podcast before this, they will, and that'll help lead into all this. So just like we did before, do you have some standard recommendations for the general population for post-workout meals? And I will add to that, is it any different from the pre-workout meal, or could I eat the same thing pre and post-workout?
That's a good question. I have some suggestions, of course. Yes. The ones you gave too, like the examples that you gave are also great. Maybe it's a sandwich or a protein shake or whatever. I would definitely say that there's much more emphasis on protein after a workout. Carbs are, of course, essential before and after. We need them before to make sure that we can fuel our workout, and then we need them after to replenish what we use during the workout. Whereas protein, we don't so much need that before a workout, but we will need that after the workout, or at least plenty throughout the day, like I was just mentioning, to ensure that we can optimally build that muscle if that's the goal. But I'm guessing most people don't want to lose muscle mass, so you probably should get in plenty of protein. So yeah, again, your examples were great. Perhaps it might also look like low fat chocolate milk is a really popular, super easy, great idea. Maybe like a Greek yogurt with berries or granola, maybe like a tuna salad sandwich on maybe some whole wheat bread. The protein shake that you had mentioned, I would maybe add like a piece of fruit to that just to, again, get those carbs in there as well. Or you could get the carbs from the milk if you are doing a protein shake with milk. And then maybe like cottage cheese and maybe some peaches, pineapple, that sort of thing. Again, the emphasis is just going to be carbs and protein after that workout.
Is there anything else relevant you can pass on concerning pre and post workout eating, whether it be, again, talking about the times, the food types, maybe things to stay away from that people eat, the amount, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, like no matter what your goals are, it's just very important to remember that you have to eat in order to perform your best and recover the best so you can continue to perform your best. I have a sports dietitian friend who always says to bookend your workouts. We actually had her on one of our podcast episodes, so I can share that. But what she means by that is make sure you always eat before, make sure you always eat after, and that's the best way to really fuel your body. And I just think that's really great advice. Again, I really do recommend that food first approach because our body really just does break down the nutrients it gets from food a lot better than it does from supplements. If you do ever want to consider supplements, it can be a great way to, of course, supplement your diet. I just highly recommend working with a dietitian to make sure you're choosing ones that are safe for you, that you're not overdoing it with any particular nutrient. I would encourage you to get your nutrients from food, but I know that can be hard to do, especially protein, for example. Like I myself take a protein supplement most days because I have a hard time getting in protein, and that's okay. But I would highly recommend working with a dietitian, especially a sports dietitian, if you do have any particular specific questions about pre or post-workout nutrition.
Hannah, where can the audience find your stuff on social media, and where can they maybe reach out to you directly if they have questions?
Yeah, so my main hub is my website. That is healthwithhannahT.com. So on there, you can find all of my blog posts. I make a lot of recipes that also will link you to my YouTube channel, to my podcast. All of my social media is on there. So that really is the main place to go. But if you have a hard time finding that, I can also on Instagram and TikTok at Dietitian Hannah. And then my podcast that I had mentioned is called The Upbeat Dietitians.
We will link that all below in the description. Hannah, thank you very much for joining the Trulyfit Podcast, and hope to have you on another episode down the road.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful.